Welcome to the Wall Street Review. In 2026, a legal paradox reached the Supreme Court. Can the government force a fraudster to surrender $4.1 million to victims, even if it cannot prove a single investor lost a penny? Between 2013 and 2019, Ongkaruck Sripetch orchestrated a series of pump-and-dump schemes involving 20 different penny stock companies. He quietly acquired discounted shares, funded secret promotional campaigns to inflate the price, and then sold his holdings into the artificially heightened market. When the Securities and Exchange Commission discovered the scheme, it brought a civil enforcement action. Sripetch admitted to the fraud, but he balked when the SEC sought a $4.1 million disgorgement order to strip him of his profits. Sripetch based his defense on a specific reading of the Liu versus SEC precedent. That ruling stated that disgorgement must be awarded for victims. Sripetch argued that since the SEC lacked evidence of actual investor losses, there were technically no victims left to compensate. The argument split the federal courts. While the Second Circuit found that disgorgement required proof of financial harm, the First and Ninth Circuits rejected that requirement, creating a fundamental disagreement over the reach of federal power. This chart shows the scale of the dispute. In a single year, disgorgement accounted for over half of the $2.7 billion the SEC recovered through enforcement. The Supreme Court's decision to resolve this split effectively determines the future of the SEC's primary tool for policing market manipulation. The Supreme Court responded with a unanimous 9-0 decision, rejecting Sripetch's defense and affirming the SEC's authority. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion, rooting the court's conclusion in a centuries-old distinction between two different ways the law of use and natural recovery. Gorsuch dismantled Sripetch's argument by looking past modern statutes and focusing on the historical difference between common law and equity. The ruling relies on a specific legal definition of restitution, one that separates the money a fraudster takes from the money a victim loses. In this visualization, the left side represents loss-based damages. This is the traditional common law approach. The goal is to make the victim whole by calculating exactly how much they lost and forcing the defendant to pay that amount back. In modern liquid stock markets, this logic often fails. Tracing exact dollar-for-dollar losses to thousands of individual retail investors buying and selling in a volatile market is often mathematically impossible. The right side represents gains-based restitution, a concept from the courts of equity. Here, the focus shifts entirely. The goal isn't to measure the victim's wallet, but to strip the fraudster of his unjust enrichment. Justice Gorsuch moved the legal metric away from investor loss. He clarified that the calculation for disgorgement relies exclusively on the net profits the fraudster generated through his misconduct. Historical equity focuses on the wrongdoer. It favors stripping the defendant of his gains over allowing him to profit from a violation, regardless of whether the victim's financial position actually changed. To illustrate this principle, the Supreme Court cited a fascinating 1936 case involving a commercial cave attraction located deep underground in Kentucky. A man profited by selling tours of a cave crossing under his neighbor's land. The neighbor suffered no physical damage and had no way to access the cave himself, so he lost nothing financially. Even so, the court ordered the operator to share his profits. The operator invaded the neighbor's legally protected interest, and that invasion alone triggered restitution. By applying this to Sripetch, the court affirmed that the SEC only needs to prove a violation of protected interests, validating the agency's ability to strip profits from those who interfere with market integrity. While the 9-0 ruling was a victory for regulators, a solo concurring opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas calls the long-term stability of this power into question. Thomas observed that, in practice, the SEC rarely returns these disgorged funds to investors. Instead, the agency frequently deposits the money directly into the U.S. Treasury. He argued that because the money often bypasses victims, it functions as a modern legal penalty rather than traditional equitable restitution. If disgorgement is reclassified as a legal penalty, it triggers the Seventh Amendment, which preserves the right to a trial by jury in suits at common law. Thomas's concurrence provides the legal foundation for defense attorneys to eventually challenge the SEC's power to bypass juries when seeking these multi-million-dollar awards. If the Seventh Amendment is found to apply, the SEC would lose its ability to obtain disgorgement through a judge alone. Defendants would be guaranteed a trial by jury. This would force the SEC to explain high-frequency trading and complex securities fraud to a lay jury, a shift that would drastically slow the speed of federal enforcement. The Sripetch case highlights the ongoing tension in American regulation, the struggle to maintain an orderly market while respecting the constitutional rights of those the government accuses of breaking the rules. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal or investment advice. For more deep dives into the mechanics of Wall Street and the law, subscribe to the Wall Street Review and like the video. We'll see you in the next one.